A whole nother world. Beautiful, innit?
Let's begin at the end of Ni no Kuni. While much of the initiating narrative beats between Shadar and Alicia were arguably the product of the Wrath of the White Witch, I can't escape the fact that she was added to the PS3 version after the Japan-only DS game had Shadar as the sole antagonist. While there's quite a bit I enjoy about the final few hours, going up against what turns out to be a prima donna after the original objective is finished just doesn't feel anywhere near as dramatically satisfying as the original endpoint. And given the huge length of this thing, it's simply not the ideal note to finish on. But that's all I'll say on the matter, because when you look at it in context of the whole experience...
It may not be perfect, but nothing is. So you make the best of what you've got.
And what we got with this game is still a beautifully realized collaboration between one of my favorite game studios and one of my favorite film studios. I remember watching the trailer for it way back in 2013, and seeing this story of an ordinary boy travelling to a fantastical world to bring his mother back from the dead, told with the same sense of imagination and beauty of a Ghibli film in a home console level 5 game, was all it took for my 10-year-old mind to instantly declare it as the greatest game ever made. It single-handedly got me interested in buying a PlayStation 3, and thus served as my gateway into another world of gaming beyond Nintendo. This has been one of my all-time favourites for many years now, but given how large of an experience it is with its lengthy story combined with the need to grind, I've never replayed it in its entirety. That is until mid-2021, when I found myself with a real itch to do just that, and did just that over the course of a few months. And what do you know, it's still absolutely wonderful, and even taking over 40 hours to beat again, I found myself sad to have reached the end. It's easily the most invested I've ever gotten with an RPG, a genre I've fallen a little out of love with in recent years. Despite frequently appealing to my taste in aesthetics, I've grown an increasing intimidation over starting incredibly long games, so considering beginning something akin to Ni no Kuni now feels like a laborious commitment to me. And I'll confess, during the time you spend marooned on the fairy ground in this second full playthrough, having to fight the same few enemies in the same area, I did find myself understanding my current hesitance towards this type of game. Under the mindset of merely wanting to progress to the next part of the story and not being able to, it got tiring. But after a while, I eventually accepted it was all part of the experience to invest the time in these battles, and as soon as I just committed to the grind, I was reminded how engaging a great RPG can be. It's incredibly rewarding to see your XP move closer towards a level up after each scrap, before eventually using your greatest strength against the roadblock you are facing. A lot of the bosses in this game aren't so much tests of skill as they are endurance, so it's more a matter of dispatching with them long before you use up all your HP and MP restoratives, and the more time invested in leveling up beforehand pays off in how much more comfortably you can handle your opponent. Getting to that point can be very time consuming, but experiencing the payoff to your efforts feels extremely gratifying. And later on we have the tacos to make leveling up a lot more interesting. I have spent more time than I'd care to admit hunting them down for the insane amount of XP you get when defeating them. Oh, that's satisfying as hell, especially when you've decided to metamorphose a familiar back down to level 1, which is a great addition by the way, adding an interesting layer of strategy to the proceedings. Anyway, I remember the day I beat this game for the first time, spending the afternoon pacing up and down this one hallway waiting for a Taco Toe cold to spawn to make the final bosses much easier to deal with. 8 years on, I got pretty stressed out when I kept letting them run away mid-battle, like honestly frustrated. For such cute, obviously Totoro-inspired creatures, it's amazing how their rarity and ability to escape a battle makes killing one such a buzz. It's a genius invention of grinding, really.
That's what she said!
I've always loved the combat system in this game, being an absolute blast to control. It's given me excellent reflexes for using the D-pad in the middle of action, but I don't think 2013 me ever truly appreciated just how exhilarating it can be. While I'm sure the DS version is a great game with much of what I adore about this one stemming from there, its use of turn-based combat would probably prevent it from being as much of an all-time favourite as its PS3 counterpart. This appeals much more to me for its sense of immediacy, to the point where no matter if I barely scrape a victory or easily dispatch with my foes, I always come away with a great sense of accomplishment. I really underestimated how fun it could be to experiment mid-battle with everyone and everything's abilities before, but playing it now I found great satisfaction in utilizing the different characters, familiars and equipment to exploit enemy weaknesses. And in doing so, I'd knock out more gold glims in a single fight than I ever thought possible on my first playthrough. These are quintessential JRPG mechanics elevated by the modern sense of momentum this combat system has. I mean, no other RPG gives me an adrenaline rush like this one does whenever I'd see an enemy charge up a deadly attack, order an all-out defense and hit the defend option myself just in the nick of time before the animation plays, then getting an all-out attack going and, late into the game, successfully using one of the lengthy to cast spells to deal a big chunk of damage. Oh man, I did not recall how absolutely thrilling that could be. I'd be glued to the screen, reveling in this high which only strengthens outside of the battles.
Easy.
In an early teaser for this PS3 version, it looks as though Level 5 almost remade the hand-drawn Ghibli cutscenes into the 3D style you see throughout most of the game. Now, to be fair, the traditionally animated cutscenes are few and after Ding Dong Dell far between, so maybe its overall inferior sequel had the right idea for immersion to keep them all looking the same. But they're such a joy to watch, I can't imagine them not being included as they are. Being hand-drawn means simple movements suddenly spring to life with such personality, and it's just wonderful to see this brand of brilliant Ghibli animation in a video game. Now, the official guide for this game, which smells very nostalgic to me now, if that's not too weird a thing to say, features some really great behind-the-scenes extras, including interviews with key crew members. In the one with Akihiro Hino, the man responsible for some of my most formative gaming experiences, he mentions that one of the main goals for the game was to give the player a sense they're able to freely walk around an anime world. To pair that vision with the artistry of an animation studio who have conjured up images and sounds which invigorate the soul unlike anything else out there has always made this game feel special. But it became even more so for me now, having realized what I love the most about Ghibli's films is how insanely beautiful the background scenery of all things is. No matter the content of the story, the lushly coloured environments always have this wonderfully idyllic atmosphere about them that makes me just want to crawl into the frame to fully immerse myself in the world presented. It's a profound sense of longing which Joe Hisashi's phenomenal and often melancholy music captures flawlessly. To have these qualities evoked in a video game means the, dare I say, desire to feel fully transported into an enthrallingly alluring Ghibli world is fulfilled with Ni no Kuni. The initial realization of this when you first get to explore the otherworld and are instantly swept up in the grandeur of it all hits you with an ecstasy which never goes away. No matter how often you hear the magnificent world map theme or see the same sights, simply roaming across the overworld is an act of pure, unparalleled gaming magic. And this might just be my favourite aspect of the entire game. I love how the camera position makes it feel like a giant diorama, allowing the same awe as those Ghibli backdrops without ever feeling overwhelming to navigate. It's a great moment late into the game when you get to Ara Memoriae, the only location where you can take in the true scope of one of the islands from Oliver's perspective. On the flip side, it's interesting to consider why Motorville has its camera positioned from an uncontrollable, almost top-down point of view. Sure, it harks back to many an RPG, some of Level 5's own even, but to me it further exemplifies how this game successfully eliminates that sense of longing to explore the unreachable I get from a Ghibli film. Much like Ara Memoriae, it's mostly somewhere you go to progress the story, and the explorable turf here is reined in with invisible walls. The parallel world is filled with tons of fascinating looking spots which can be fully traversed, and so Motorville, a town with no practical means of contextually limiting where you can go, simply frames it in such a way where you can't see anywhere else interesting, eliminating the desire to go beyond where you can go. Also, I rewatched Ponyo during my time replaying this, and thought it was interesting how both evoke the storybook feel both are going for in these small town settings by emphasizing the boat and car aesthetics respectively. And it makes this tone of 50s America gel with the fairy tale undertones perfectly, which allows for a breadth of varied and memorable locales, from the most charmingly silly location to the most imposing of dangerous places, to coexist with one another seamlessly. There's such an absorbing aura of wonder and adventure about this game, which, along with the array of chests, hidden treasures and forest glades for you to discover there within, makes the world of Ni no Kuni one of the most engrossing I've ever had the pleasure of exploring.
そういうところはですね、やっぱり二の国というその作品を非常に個性づけているのかなと思います。歩くだけで楽しいっていうようなそんな作品になったんじゃないかと思いますね。
I wholeheartedly agree, especially on the point of walking around. This was the first game I saw have these simple movement animations like the stair run or those subtle stumbles that really added to the immersion of the already amazing visuals. Level 5 did a superb job translating the Ghibli style into 3D, made running through the towns and dangerous places an undemanding but incredibly satisfying task. The unlockable jump gives me way too much joy, it's so good! And it's lovely how the stamp reward system gives the player legit incentive to do the side errands and bounties to earn improvements to the in-game quality of life or those other fun bonuses. Because of how enjoyable running around is, I find it can become quite addictive completing errands or collecting pieces of heart. And those recurring characters like the consistently broken-hearted couple and the guy who keeps losing his diary add a lot of charm to these basic tasks, with enough self-awareness later on to make you smile through the repetitiveness. Then there's Horace the Ghost, who I stumbled across by complete accident on the first day I had this game. He's not listed as an errand, but if you encounter him early enough like I did, he'll become a noteworthy presence throughout the entire experience. To have this easy-to-miss individual quiz you about the wizard's companion in exchange for some very useful rewards and interesting lore feels worthwhile and rewarding, more so because it is easy to miss. It's fun to uncover and very enriching to an already captivating world and story.
That's it, man! You got it!
This is an enchanting tale. It's imaginative and characterful, with Jrpg being one of the most memorable companions I've encountered in a video game. I still can't believe that's Dave Coaches. But most of all, the premise just works. The narrative hook easily resonates, and it fits with the Ghibli style by essentially being about a child learning to grow up by journeying through a fantasy world, lending the entire experience a lingering poignancy, which becomes even more touching with how level 5 used the scope of the running time to convey Oliver's character development in a very unique way.
Mr. Drippy says there's a way to help her here in this world.
So, you've come here to save your mother?
Yeah, I guess.
It's fitting Oliver should heal plenty of broken hearts throughout the course of the game, because by doing so he's gradually mending his own and growing to care about saving this world just as much as his mother. What follows after that conversation is the microcosm of his internal growth, in which he takes on the Temple of Trials for his own cause, comes out victorious to find Old Smoky threatening to erupt. But now he has the gumption to trek up the mountain to stop the volcano from erupting to help others. What really sells this idea is the piece of music which will play at key victories in the story, giving you this real triumphant feeling that you've done some good for this world, both as the player and Oliver. To see his evolution from the timid boy who only agrees to embark on this momentous task for his mother to the confident, capable wizard he is by the end of the game is compelling stuff. But it's not just the writing conveying this either, and this is what I commend the most. It's amassing stronger wands with a larger list of spells to cast and the evolution in navigation. From slowly discovering more of the Summerlands on foot until the boat expands the world significantly, then halfway through having the whole map to explore via riding a freaking dragon, and getting the spell which will teleport you anywhere you've been. You really get the sense you're mastering this world both narratively and gameplay wise, intertwining with one another effortlessly. It's why I've never minded that the two trios of boss fights fought in the last few hours aren't particularly hard. It's what you've been working towards the whole time, so to hold your own against these brutal attacks at the final hurdles of the story feels like the culmination of the skills the characters and player have accumulated along the way. Reaching this point and not being faced with a difficulty spike makes your efforts through the whole game seem more meaningful. And the battles themselves are enough of a climactic ordeal to still be riveting to play through. And I love the backstory you get when Shadar is defeated, realizing the story's ultimate resolution comes about through this cycle of empathy. Shadar saves Alicia, giving her the opportunity to raise Oliver, who redeems both Shadar and the White Witch. I always remembered the guide mentioning about finding the last tale of wonder in Motorville right near the end of the game. Well, I actually read it this go around and was struck by the depth and weight it added to an already beautiful moment of resolution. This world is a lot richer in the particulars than I've ever given it credit for, retaining the same quirkiness, intrigue, beauty, coziness, and excitement of somewhere Ghibli had create, with plenty of affectionate homages to their work on level 5's part. And to have all this set to Joe Hisashi's frankly perfect soundtrack, it's the icing on the cake. This is one of the best video game OSTs of all time as far as I'm concerned, enhancing the grandeur of every situation to spectacular soul-stirring effect. I can listen to any of these tracks on their own, and as the very best music composed for media should do, it takes me right back into the atmosphere of this marvelous experience. Sometime near the end of this playthrough, I detached myself from the immersed state I was in for long enough to realize how content this game was leaving me feeling while playing it. I get the impression this project was a real labor of love from everyone involved in making it, because the passion behind every facet of the final product is infectious in a way which is incomparable to anything else I can recall. Ni no Kuni is a remarkable piece of entertainment, eliciting the serene excitement of childhood in a joyfully creative and entrancing manner to make for an unforgettable journey.